Thu Nga và Phan Quang Trọng của đài truyền hình SBTN Texas xin kính chào quý khán giả. Và thưa quý vị, hôm nay chúng tôi có một buổi nói chuyện rất là đặc biệt với một nhân vật cũng rất là đặc biệt nữa. Tại vì nhân vật này không phải là người Việt nhưng mà yêu mến người Việt và yêu mến miền Nam Việt Nam và đặc biệt là quân lực của Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Và hôm nay thì xin mời anh Phan Quang Trọng có thể là giới thiệu người guest của chúng ta.
Dạ, xin kính chào quý vị, xin chào chị Thu Nga. Thưa chị và thưa quý vị, hôm nay chúng tôi có một cái hân hạnh là được phỏng vấn ông Fred Koster. Ông là một trong những người đạo diễn khá nổi tiếng và đặc biệt những cái chương trình và những cái movie của ông ta làm là về chiến tranh Việt Nam. Chẳng hạn như cuốn phim Ride the Thunder mà tiếng Việt chúng ta gọi là Cưỡi ngọn sấm, nói lên một cái câu chuyện rất là anh hùng của quân lực Việt Nam Cộng Hòa ngăn chặn sự xâm lăng của Cộng sản Việt Nam vào năm 1972. Một cuốn phim đã ra đời 3 năm. Vâng, thì hôm nay chúng tôi rất là đặc biệt là có được trực tiếp nói chuyện với ông Fred Koster, không phải ở trong cái văn phòng của ông, mà hiện nay ông đang đi du lịch để kiếm tài liệu để làm những cái project mới về chiến tranh Việt Nam. Hello Fred.
Hello,
hey, how you doing?
Yeah, can you hear us well?
Oh, I hear you perfect.
Okay, so where are you now?
Right now I am in Arizona.
Oh wow.
Oh wow. Vâng, thưa quý vị, và nói về ông Fred Koster thì quý vị cũng biết rằng cách đây cỡ khoảng 2 năm thì cái phim Ride the Thunder đã chiếu ở đây, ở trong những cái rạp chiếu bóng rất là lớn. Và nhưng mà cái ngày đó thì ông Fred Koster có ở đây, mà ông Botkin là author và ông Fred Koster là director. Yeah, we can start conversation now, right, friend?
Yes.
Okay. At first, I just introduced you by the Vietnamese. You are director of the Ride the Thunder, and the author was a Botkin. And now we would like to know more about you, like why, what is the motivation when you did the Ride the Thunder, and what, why you involved in the, you know, like south of Vietnam, and something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
The movie is based on a book by Richard Botkin, and it's one of those really thick books. It's like 600 pages.
I have a copy.
Yeah, you know, well, you know, I thought I knew the Vietnam War and the history of it because I only know what I was taught in high school and college and so on. But it wasn't until I read Richard's book and I talked with Richard that I learned really the truth of the Vietnam War and what the South Vietnamese people went to. And really, to me, it's one of the great tragedies of the 20th century.
Yes, this is a battle for truth. I don't know if I'm going to write another book or make another movie, but we need to get the truth out. This is an incredibly important battle. So far, the communists are winning. They're controlling history. We need to change the way the world remembers the Vietnam War, because right now, the film record shows the Americans poorly and the Vietnamese even worse. And we need to change that. We need to write history. We need to write truth back into history.
And I really do mean that. And what is being taught in our schools, you know, what the media is telling the American people now for what, 40 or 50 years, is simply distorted. And I mean, it's just simply not true. And what we did is when I read it as a filmmaker, it got me excited because it's wonderful to tell a story that hasn't been told before. And the story of the South Vietnamese people is around the Vietnam War. It's very sad, but it's also very inspiring about what people can do and how they can arise above terrible, you know, circumstances. And I think that's shown by how well the South Vietnamese have done in America. You know, as a community, you guys have done tremendous. And it goes to show you that if you can have the same people, and if you put them from a communist to a capitalism, you know, free market and freedom, how they can really excel. But it's a great story, and I tell you, I am honored. I really am honored to be part of this. You know, it's a group of us. We're all doing it, and I just feel so honored to be doing it. And just as a filmmaker, I mean, I can't. You know, I can't. It to me, to tell the world the truth of your story, you know, is just like I said. I just feel honored.
Okay, let me translate a little bit to the audience. Yeah, just a little bit, because I think that they understand almost. Dạ vâng ơi, thưa quý vị, và ông Fred Koster ông nói rằng ông cũng có biết về cái Vietnam War, tức là chiến tranh Việt Nam ở trường, nhưng mà cũng như là về media. Tuy nhiên khi mà ông biết sự thật, khi mà ông xem cái cuốn sách của ông Botkin và ông viết, thì ông cảm thấy rằng cái sự chiến đấu vào cái sự chiến đấu của hào hùng của bên quân lực Việt Nam Cộng Hòa.
It's the whole Đông Hà. We will fight in Đông Hà and we will die in Đông Hà.
Rồi lính miền Nam. Rồi mời trọng tiếp theo.
Hello, Fred. You know, I met a lot of American veterans who fought in Vietnam War. And one of the stories that really struck me is the story of folk who coming back from the war. And I recall one of the veterans have said that on the plane, when his airplane landing in LA, and one of the flight attendants basically tell him that, hey, there's a lot of American out there is welcome you home, but it's not the kind of welcome that they welcome the hero. And it's really sad. When I heard this kind of story, I wonder why the media never really portray a true story about those that involved Vietnam War.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what you said is absolutely true. It's really unfortunate that, you know, you have men that fought for freedom, and they did it was, and again, now there's 2.5 million men that served over there.
Right.
And whenever you get that many men, you know, there's going to be some bad ones that do bad things, but the vast majority of the guys, their intentions were good, and they were doing something really good. But it's the media, and why the media distorted it. I think there's many reasons, but you know, it's you know, I got to say, you know, something that's something we should really talk about, is why they did it. You know, I mean, were they do they want a communist society here in America? That's something to really think about, and you know, it's because you have South Vietnamese people. The truth is right there. And I've talked to a lot of reporters, and you know, that served in Vietnam. And some of them told me that when they would report a story, it would be changed in Washington, D.C. So by the time it hit the newspapers, it wasn't what they reported. And we have people saying that. I have that on film, that the stories were changed. But to me, the tragedy of what the media and also the U.S. Congress did to the South Vietnamese people, it's a story that has to be told, and it's so tragic. It's so sad. It's sometimes when I'm working, I have to get up and walk away and kind of walk to kind of get settled down, because America's got to know all the people. I mean, like in Ken Burns' show, why didn't he put in 250,000 people died in the ocean? You know, trying to escape communism. I mean, that's what the war was all about.
Right.
I mean, you know, why didn't he say anything about the South Vietnamese victories?
Right.
Also, with the Tet Offensive.
Tet Offensive, right.
It was a great victory, not only for America, but it was a great victory for South Vietnam. And have you seen that clip? A number of years ago, I came across, it was kind of like a hidden Walter Cronkite clip.
Yeah.
And we released it. Have you seen that by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you have Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
You have Walter Cronkite saying what a great victory the Tet Offensive was for South Vietnam, and how the people fought against the communists. They didn't rise up to go with them.
Right.
I mean, actually, with your interview, I can supply the tape to you if you don't want it. It's Walter Cronkite, 30 seconds. If you can put that in this interview, so people understand.
Yeah.
And this clip was not in Ken Burns' show.
Right.
My question is, he had access to it. Why didn't he put it in? Because it didn't fit his narrative. You know, he wants to make the South Vietnamese people look bad, and that's simply the truth.
Yes.
He wants to make, you know, how come he didn't interview any politicians?
Right.
You know, why didn't, you know, and even people that we've interviewed have that were in his show have told us that he distorted their view in what was put on screen.
Right.
So we have that. It's Ken Burns had an agenda coming in, and the agenda, and then he fit his film to make the agenda. But I think, and I apologize for talking so much. Sometimes I get too passionate.
No, don't worry.
But I think the South Vietnamese people, it's really important for all of us to get together to tell the truth, because, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, you don't want Ken Burns. That's the history of the South Vietnamese people.
Absolutely.
The lies about the South Vietnamese people and the war are just, it's mind-boggling. I just can't understand, but I apologize. I don't mean to ramble on. Hopefully you guys can edit this.
No,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what,
yeah.
Fred, in Canberra, or in a lot of anti-war view, they portray the South Vietnamese as corrupted, as we don't know anything about communism, but he forget that there's 1 million North Vietnamese have left North Vietnam in 1954 to migrate south, to start the South, the governments and everything, because they understand communists back in the 40s, back in the 50s. So it's the portray of them as an ignorant group of people, I think is really, it's a lopsided view of the war.
Yeah, and then beside that, just like you, we don't understand why the media, most of them on the side of the communists. And Ken Burns was in an anti-group, and he still is. And Lynn Novick is a daughter of the one in the anti-war also. And when they made the film 10,000 Days, yeah. And they use on the same thing with with the anti-group. And they only act like only American soldier involved in the Vietnam War with the communists, and they forgot about our soldier. Yeah. Don't you? Don't you agree that? Yeah, because they act like the only American involved with the communists. Yeah, they forgot all of us.
In our Vietnam War series, he refused to tell the story of the millions of Vietnamese refugees, or the 250,000 boat people who died trying to escape, or the 1 million people imprisoned in re-education camps. Nor did he show the victories and heroism of the South Vietnamese military. Why did Burns refuse to show this broadcast announcing a great South Vietnamese victory?
First and simplest, the Viet Cong suffered a military defeat. Its missions proved suicidal. If they intended to stay in the cities as a negotiating point, they failed at that. The Vietnamese army reacted better than even its most ardent supporters had anticipated. There were no defections from its ranks, as the Viet Cong apparently had expected, and the people did not rise to support the Viet Cong as they also were believed to have expected.
There are those who want to rewrite history, to say the South Vietnamese wanted communism, and that the country of South Vietnam never existed.
I think something like 12,000 South Vietnamese soldiers desert every month. So if they're doing that, they're very successful. But the other side, the National Liberation Front, they know why they're fighting. That's why they've been fighting so well for so long. I mean, it's a people's war. It's truly a war of the people, by the people, and for the people.
He's another one that has been painted as being very corrupt and bad.
Right.
Yes.
And really, historians now that look back, his assassination was the worst thing that happened to South Vietnam.
Yes.
And as you guys know, America was complicit in that.
Yeah.
Whether they're directly or indirectly, they were involved. He did not want American ground troops. He said, just give us the weapons, the military aid, we can fight on our own.
Right.
But after he got assassinated, and of course, Kennedy got assassinated 6 months later,
Right.
that all changed in the ground things. And I think one thing that we have to educate not only the American people, but the younger Vietnamese generation here. And one of the things I want to really point out, which we will, is it wasn't until 1969 that America starts supplying the South Vietnamese military with new equipment.
Right.
Up until 1969, they were given old World War II equipment.
Exactly.
So they were fighting, the communists had the AK-47s. They had all the new equipment.
Right.
And the South Vietnamese army were fighting with old equipment.
Right.
And it people don't know that, and that's one thing in America that America, and this is sad. I hate to even say this, but the media tell us, oh well, it's the South Vietnamese, it's the Vietnamese people are fighting our guys with pitchforks and homemade things. and it's not true. They had AK-47s.
Right.
Their weaponry was better than the South Vietnamese Army until 1969.
Exactly.
One thing, you know, and again, I don't want to dwell on Ken Burns, but people need to understand, if we don't all get together as a team and work on this, that it's going to be his story that will be told for hundreds of years. People will look back, our future generations will look back, and they won't feel pride for South Vietnam, which they should, because I mean, you lived it. I mean, you guys, but the stories I've heard are so, you know, I mentioned before, sad, but they're so inspiring. I mean, you know, to think that you'd hop on a boat and try to, and I mean, you know, leave your homeland. You had mentioned before about 1 million people leaving North Vietnam to go to South.
Right.
It would have been more, but the communists sealed the border where the people couldn't leave anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So it would have been even more. And
Right.
that's something that Ken Burns, again, did not go into. There's so many things that he did not go into. You know, the great last battle to save Saigon. Okay, that was incredibly heroic stand by the South Vietnamese military. And guess what? Wasn't even in the show.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, you mentioned about the end of the war in 1975. There's not single shot toward the American when they withdraw from Vietnam. You know, even though I was there, I'm about 15 years old, it's chaotic in Saigon. And my uncle took me to the U.S. Embassy on Hồng Thập Tự. And I can see that the South Vietnamese military is still intact and still try to protect and support the American withdrawal from Vietnam. You know, so you're right. They fought it to the very last day.
Oh,
they know that the Allies
Right.
leaving them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that battle to save Saigon is something that is not told in history, and that's one thing that we're going to put an emphasis on, because the story is incredible. As you know, you had generals who committed suicide.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than surrender. Now, imagine you're in the fight for your life, right?
Right.
And all they do is say, okay, here, you got like 2 clips of bullets, and that's it for the day. That's all your ammunition.
Exactly.
And that's it. Like, can you imagine fighting the enemy? You run out, and all you got is a rifle. I mean, can you imagine the guy stayed and fought, you know, or, you know, not having the fuel, not having the spare parts to be able to use your Air Force.
Right.
And these are all things that we're going after. And I'll tell you, we're going to interview congressmen that voted against the military and foreign aid for South Vietnam, because I want to hear from them. Okay, why did you do it? And did you know what was going to happen to those people? And that's a question and no one's ever asked them, and we have to ask them. And again, I don't mean to ramble on. I hope you can edit this so it does, but think about this for a second. Can you imagine telling the history of World War II without talking about the concentration camps?
Right.
You know, without talking about the Nazi purges where they kill people, the atrocities that they did.
Right.
Can you imagine not telling about the freedom fighters who fought against the Nazis?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's like telling, I mean, that's what we did to the Vietnam War. Ken Burns had 18 hours. He didn't say anything about the re-education camps.
Right.
That's like doing World War II and not talking about the Jewish and the concentration camps.
Yeah.
You know, or the horrible.
Thưa quý vị, tiếp tục phần tường trình của chúng tôi ở Nam, và hôm nay thì chúng ta đi qua một cái địa điểm mới ở tại Ba Lan, và đây là cái xứ nào đó?
Dạ, đây là thành phố Krakow.
Krakow.
Dạ, Krakow ở phía nam Ba Lan. Ngày xưa thành phố này đây chỉ là một làng nhỏ nhưng nổi tiếng trên khắp thế giới vì đây là có trại tập trung của Đức Quốc xã, nơi mà trên 2 triệu dân Do Thái đã bị giết tại đây qua những lò hơi hay là đói.
Đây là cái đường xe lửa này, hồi xưa đó chở dân Do Thái đi vào ở trong trại tập trung đó để mà giết. Nó giết có nhiều cách lắm, là giết bằng gas, giết bằng chết đói, giết bằng cái sự mà tàn sát rất là dã man. Và nhìn chung quanh đi thì có lô cốt nè, rồi có những cái nhà mà nho nhỏ ở bên kia, nhưng mà chúng ta sẽ đi vào thăm thì mới biết. Vậy chúng ta bây giờ xin mời quý vị đi vào.
Trại tập trung, các trại để chứa người Rồi sau đó mới là phân phối vào từng trại một.
Mà chúng ta cũng thấy cái đường xe lửa này chạy ngang rất là dài ở đây.
Chạy vào trong đó rồi xong thả người là chạy ngược trở ra, chị thấy chỗ đổi ra chỗ đó là kia đó.
Và quý vị thấy có những cái đồn gác kìa, cái đồn canh kìa. Nhưng mà cái cảnh
trong đó là bây giờ vô trong đó sẽ thấy những cái hàng rào như thế nào.
Nhưng mà cái cảnh mà mấy đứa con nít tội quá.
Dạ vâng.
Atrocities by the VCs that are so I can't even the VC to the South Vietnamese people is what ISIS is today.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe even worse.
Yeah.
I mean, the things they did, and again, we have testimony on film that we're going to be showing in the film. And all I know is that when people watch our film, when you walk away, you're going to have a different opinion. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to be direct. We're going to be hard-hitting and tell the truth, because all the people who died and suffered during the Vietnam War, to me, one of the best ways to honor them, and I think we have to do it, is to tell their true story. Okay, they weren't cowards. You know, they fought. And I think this is really important for the people to know. And also, the hardships that you guys went through. I mean, you were 15 years old in 75. I can't even imagine what you went through, and the people that stayed. And it's a tremendous, there's been, movies made. Now, we did Ride to Thunder, and Ride to Thunder began to tell the truth, only began to tell the truth, just a little surface.
Yeah.
But, we've had a great reception. When we opened at the theaters in our premiere, we were #1 in the country at the box office. Now, we just had just small, on a per theater basis, we were #1. I mean, we did, I think the first week we did $60,000 or 70 at the box office. And then we went on a limited theatrical run where we did really well. We beat almost all the big movies at the theaters.
Right.
It's up on Amazon Prime now, along with some other places. But on Amazon Prime, I know it's been over 800,000 people have watched it. And now I think we're closing in on 900,000 people have watched on Amazon Prime, which is really good. So, and the comments that you read about it, people go, I don't know this. I didn't know this happened. With the project that we're working on now, if I can give you the website, we just launched the website. It's not complete, but we're adding to it. It's usavn.org. Again, usavn.org. Now we're just launching it, so it is incomplete, but the project we're working on now will go much in depth.
Yes.
And it'll really tell the people the true story. And like I said, I'm so excited about it. And also, thank you for, wanting to become part of all this. I mean, because it's only going to work if we're all together. If we're divided, it won't. And that's one thing that I found as we've been working on this. There's many people that want to tell the truth, but one person's out here, one person's there, one person there, and it's just it's a bunch of small voices that aren't being heard.
Right.
That's why we have to work together on this and make it, a big splash where we can do that. And like I said, Ride to Thunder was the beginning.
Yeah.
And this one, like I said, I'm putting my heart and soul in this. Yeah. And I can't think of a greater project. I've done a lot of projects in the past, but I can't think of a greater project where, at the end of my life, I feel like, okay, I did something, I made a difference. And that's, like I said, when I say I mean as a team that all of us were doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, vâng ơi, thưa quý vị, tại vì chúng ta cũng đã gần hết giờ rồi. Chúng ta will be a next show and we'll go to the detail what you are doing now. But let me translate it a little bit what we talking. Yeah. Vâng, thưa quý vị, và quý vị cũng thấy rằng cái gương mặt của ông và cái giọng nói của ông là rất là emotional, rất là có vẻ là cũng rất là buồn phiền về những cái cuốn phim mà phản chiến, và nhất là sau này cái cuốn phim của Ken Burns. Và ông nói là cũng giống như là mình coi cái phim đó, mà nếu mà người ta làm một cái World War II, tức là đại chiến thứ hai, mà nếu mà không có nói về những cái camp mà bắt người Do Thái, thành ra cái cuốn phim mà The Vietnam War đó, quý vị biết là họ nói sai sự thật, họ chỉ là không bao giờ là phỏng vấn thương binh người của Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Vì vậy cho nên ông sẽ bắt đầu một cái project mà ông sẽ nói về cái sự thật của người lính, cái sự hào hùng của người lính Việt Nam Cộng Hòa, và ông cũng có nhắc về Tổng thống Diệm. Thì ở trong cái cuốn mà Vietnam War đó, nó nói có nhiều cái chi tiết mà không có đúng sự thật. And Fred, we will be at the next show And I just explain, to the audio whatever you said, just briefly. And
Dạ, kính thưa quý vị, là chúng tôi sẽ trở lại với ông Fred Koster, và vừa rồi ông Koster cũng nói với chúng ta là ông bắt đầu một cái công trình mới để nói về sự thật về chiến tranh Việt Nam, nói về sự thật về người cộng sản. Thì ông có mention cái website mà ông làm cho cái nhóm của ông tên là usavn.org. Thì cái website bây giờ vẫn chưa hoàn thành, nhưng mà ông sẽ cố gắng đem cái sự thật của cuộc chiến Việt Nam cho đến dư luận của thế giới, và nhất là của cộng đồng người Việt và người Hoa Kỳ.
Đúng rồi, và cái Rise the Thunder là coi như là bắt đầu cái beginning của nói về cái sự thật của sự chiến đấu hào hùng của Việt Nam Cộng Hòa. Thank you, Fred, and I'll see you later. Next show.
Oh, great. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
For the South Vietnamese to tell their own history. Help us tell the world the truth of the Vietnam War. For the South Vietnamese to tell their own history. Help us tell the world the truth of the Vietnam War.